The wind was sharp that afternoon, brushing across the Oregon coastline like cold fingers. Seagulls cawed in the distance, circling lazily above the jagged cliffs. The sky wore a slate-grey mask, casting long shadows over the wet sand. Liam Harper walked alone, his sneakers half buried with each step along the tide line, his hoodie pulled tight against the chill. He didn't come out here to find anything. That wasn't the point. It never was. The beach was just where he went when the house felt too loud with silence. After his brother passed, silence had taken on its own sound, a heavy, endless ringing. His foot struck something hard. It wasn't a rock. Liam stumbled, then looked down. There, half buried in the damp sand near a drift of seaweed, was a phone. Its black surface was scratched, but still intact, glinting faintly in the pale afternoon light. The screen was covered with grains of sand, its corners chipped. Curious, he crouched and picked it up, brushing it off. The screen came to life with a faint flicker. No lock screen, no passcode. A thumbnail gallery opened instantly. Dozens of videos, no names, just dates and times, some recent. Some weeks old, all shot vertically, all taken with shaky hands. If this mysterious start got you hooked, make sure to subscribe now. You won't want to miss what's coming. Liam glanced up, scanning the beach. There was no one nearby, just the whisper of wind and the crash of distant waves. He turned the phone over in his hand, heart starting to pound, unsure why. Maybe it was the stillness around him. Maybe it was the silence on the phone. No notifications, no messages, just those videos. His thumb hovered over the first one. It was dated 3 weeks ago. EU038 in length. He tapped it. The screen filled with motion. A camera pointed downward, filming feet crunching through dry leaves. The person holding it, clearly the owner, walked quickly, breathing heavily. They whispered something too low to make out. The sound was distorted, like wind in a tunnel. Suddenly the camera jerked upward. Trees, tall, dark, swaying slightly. Then a pause. The filmer stood still, holding their breath. Off in the distance, something moved between the trees. A shape. Human? Maybe. It was impossible to tell. The clip ended abruptly, screen fading to black. Liam stared at the phone. He wasn't sure what he'd expected. Maybe prank footage or someone's lost hiking log, but there was something in that short clip that didn't feel staged. It felt raw. Real. The second video was dated a few days later. He didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he looked around again, scanning the rocky outcrop where he'd found the phone. No backpack, no shoes, no trace of anyone. The sand was smooth, disturbed only by the tide and the occasional bird print. Liam slipped the phone into his hoodie pocket and stood up. The chill now felt sharper, like something was watching. He started walking back toward the road that curved up the bluff, passing the gnarled driftwood logs that lined the higher beach. With each step, he thought of that whisper, the movement in the trees, the strange, abrupt end to the video. He should turn the phone in, he knew, take it to the sheriff's office or drop it at a gas station. But he wouldn't. Not yet. Something about it, about those videos, felt like a thread he had to follow. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was dangerous. But for the first time in months, Liam felt something other than numbness. And that alone was enough to keep the phone close. Even if he had no idea what he was stepping into, Liam Harper had never been the type to chase mysteries. At 17, most of his adventures were quiet ones, long walks editing old video clips, sketching outlines for films he never finished. He didn't like crowds, and he wasn't built for thrill. But after Micah died, the world lost color. His brother had been the loud one, the brave one, the anchor. Without him, Liam drifted. His parents thought a change of scenery might help. So they sent him to stay with Aunt Kelsey in Cannon Beach, a sleepy coastal town where fog hugged the cliffs and tourists came to breathe the salt air. Liam hadn't argued. Any place was better than home. That afternoon, after finding the phone, he sat on the window seat of his aunt's cottage, the ocean crashing just beyond the dunes. The phone rested on his lap like it belonged there. He opened the gallery again. The first video was still paused at its black screen. He hesitated, then tapped the second one instead. This time it started with dusk light bleeding through the forest canopy. The camera bobbed, pointed ahead. Whoever was filming was running. Not sprinting, more like stumbling, panicked, trying not to make noise. Every few seconds the camera jolted as the person glanced behind them. No words, just their breath, fast, sharp, uneven. A branch cracked somewhere off-screen. The filmer froze. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, something rustled. Close. The camera spun and captured only blurred leaves and darkness before the video cut off. Liam leaned back, pulse quickening. He rewound the clip, watching it again. This time he noticed something he hadn't seen before. At the 11-second mark, between the trees, a shape. It wasn't clear, not fully, but it looked like a shoulder or a head. Human, maybe. It was too brief to know. He paused the frame and zoomed in. Pixelated, shadowed, nothing definitive. But the sense of being watched was unmistakable. It wasn't just fear in the filmer's breath. It was dread. Liam swallowed. He should stop. This wasn't his problem. But something about the footage gnawed at him, the way it mirrored his own fear. The fear that something had been following him ever since Micah's accident. The world had lost logic when his brother vanished from it. So why not this? Why not a lost phone full of fear? He played the third video. This one was different. It opened in silence. The screen was still. The camera had been placed on the ground, angled toward a clearing. The light was grey and strange. The trees stood motionless. Then, slowly, someone walked into frame. They weren't looking at the camera. Their back was turned. They knelt by a stump, muttering words too soft to hear. They held something in their hand, a piece of cloth or paper. Their voice trembled. The figure paused, turned, and for one piercing second looked directly into the lens. The face was pale, drawn, eyes hollow with something that looked like despair or warning. Then, without a word, the person stood and walked away, disappearing into the trees. Liam exhaled sharply. He checked the timestamp. This video had been taken 5 days ago, which meant that whoever that was, they'd been here, recently, possibly still nearby. The hair on his arms stood up. It wasn't just the strangeness of the footage, it was the way it was filmed. There was urgency, fear, a message maybe, one no one else had received. He wondered who had been meant to see it. Why leave the phone buried? Why not destroy it? Unless they wanted someone to find it. He stared at the final frame, the empty clearing fading into static. The wind outside picked up, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a thought flickered, quiet but insistent. This isn't over, not even close. Liam couldn't sleep that night. The waves outside crashed steadily, rhythmically, but his thoughts ran jagged and fast. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the phone on his nightstand like a glowing eye, silent but alive. Just before midnight, he sat up and grabbed it. There were still over 20 videos. He scrolled through them, pausing on timestamps, trying to piece together a sequence. Some were filmed during the day, others at night. The more recent they were, the shorter they became. The early ones stretched several minutes. The latest ones barely hit 15 seconds. He tapped the fourth video. It opened with heavy breathing again, louder this time. The camera was aimed low, showing damp soil and patches of moss. The sound of wind rustling leaves filled the mic, then a whisper and just one word, almost lost in the wind. Still. The camera shifted. The filmer turned, revealing a line of trees with strange marks carved into the bark. Liam paused the video and leaned closer. The symbols weren't letters, not quite. Jagged lines intersecting at angles, like some forgotten alphabet. 3 trees bore the same marking. He hit play again. The filmer approached one of the trees and ran their fingers across the symbol. They were crying. Not sobbing. It was silent but unmistakable. Their hand shook. Then, behind them, something moved. Barely. Just enough for a shift of shadow where there should have been none. The camera swung wildly, the screen went black, and the sound cut off. Liam sat frozen. He rewound that moment 5 times. Every time he caught it, that flicker of motion. It wasn't an animal. It was too upright. Too deliberate. He felt the room grow colder. He checked the next video. Nighttime. The filmer stood at the edge of a clearing, flashlight sweeping across a cluster of rocks. One of them had a mark, the same strange symbol, but this time drawn in what looked like charcoal or ash. The camera zoomed in slowly. Just as it reached the center, a shrill noise pierced the audio, high-pitched and fast like a scream played backwards. Liam flinched and dropped the phone. It hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. He stared at it for a long second, then reached down, heart pounding. When he lifted it again, the screen was cracked in the corner, but the video still played. The scream had faded. Now it was just silence and static. He exited the clip. What was happening? He tried to rationalize it. Maybe the phone had belonged to a college student making a horror short. Maybe it was found footage-style performance art. That would explain the symbols, the shaky angles, the sound distortion. But that didn't explain the look in the filmer's eyes. That moment when the person turned and stared directly at the camera in the third video, there was no acting in that. There was only fear, real and raw and consuming. He checked the phone's data. No service, no Wi-Fi. It hadn't synced to any cloud, no identifying name, no email. Just a folder named Watch. He opened it. Inside were several audio files. He didn't dare press play. Not yet. Instead, he went back to the video list. The 6th video was only 7 seconds long. He played it. Darkness. The sound of running. A voice, not the filmer's, whispering, "Don't stop filming." Then it cut off. Liam stared at the black screen, his hands trembling. He wasn't sure why, but that voice felt closer than it should have. Like it hadn't come from inside the phone, but from just outside his window. For the first time since finding the device, Liam felt something deeper than fear. It was a warning, a presence. As if the videos weren't just telling a story, but watching who was watching them. And something told him that pressing play again would come at a cost. The next morning, Liam walked into town, the phone burning like a secret in his pocket. The air smelled of salt and damp pine, and the streets were still quiet, the shops just starting to open. He wasn't sure what he was doing, not really, but his feet had taken him there anyway. He stopped outside a small coffee shop and looked through the glass. Behind the counter, wiping down mugs, was Brielle. She noticed him instantly. Her expression lit up, then narrowed with suspicion, a look only childhood friends could pull off. "Liam Harper," she said as he stepped inside, "I thought you died or disappeared, or joined a monastery." "Not dead," he said, "just hiding." She handed him a hot chocolate without asking. "Still allergic to caffeine?" "Still afraid of it," he said, smiling weakly. They sat in the back corner, under a wall of old newspaper clippings and faded photos of Cannon Beach through the decades. He hadn't meant to say anything, but then the phone was on the table between them, and he was telling her everything. The beach, the buried phone, the videos, the symbols. Brielle didn't laugh. She didn't mock. She listened, her brow furrowed, her hand resting on her chin. "You watched them all?" she asked. "Not yet," Liam admitted. "Some are hard to watch." She reached for the phone. "Show me." He hesitated, then handed it over. She tapped through the gallery, choosing a video near the middle. As it played, her posture stiffened. The same marks, the same voice, the same panic. When it ended, she stared at the screen, unmoving. "I've seen those symbols before," she said finally. Liam looked at her. "Where?" "There's this old legend. Locals don't really talk about it anymore. My granddad told me once after too much bourbon. He called it the Watcher of Willow Dunes. Said it wasn't a person, more like a presence, a thing that follows but never shows its face. Supposedly, if you see the markings, you've been chosen." "Chosen for what?" "No one ever said, but everyone who saw them disappeared." Liam frowned. "Like missing hikers?" Brielle nodded. "They say it's all just stories, warnings to keep kids out of the woods, but, she stared at the phone again, That symbol? It's not random. It's carved into a tree near the south trailhead. I remember because it looked like someone had scratched it in blood. Liam leaned forward. You think it's real? I think something's happening, she said, and you just stepped into the middle of it. They sat in silence. Outside, the sky had darkened, fog rolling in from the sea. Brielle handed the phone back to him, her fingers lingering for half a second. You're not doing this alone, she said. If you keep watching, I'm watching too. Liam tried to protest, but she cut him off. You're the only person I know who'd actually follow a haunted phone trail instead of running. So yeah, you need backup. He almost smiled. Together they went through the metadata stored in the phone's files. Most were stripped. No GPS tags, no device ID. But one video had a corrupted location file. When Brielle pulled it up on a recovery app, it pinged a point on a map just outside of town. 10 miles east, near the woods, near Willow Dunes. Liam looked at the map, then at her. That's close. Too close, Brielle said. And suddenly, the phone wasn't just a mystery. It was a map, a breadcrumb trail. Brielle leaned back. We should go there. See what's left? Liam hesitated. He thought of the voice whispering, "Don't stop filming," of the person crying beside the marked tree, of the face in the lens. Then he nodded, because something about this wasn't just haunting someone else's story anymore. It was becoming his. The trailhead was quiet when they arrived. A faded sign marked the entrance. Willow Dunes Preserve, stay on path. Below it, a cracked map was barely legible, the ink faded by time and weather. Liam stared at the dense forest beyond, the trees thick and tall, their branches knitting the sky into grey lace. Brielle checked her phone again. This is the spot from the corrupted file, she said. Same coordinates. Liam nodded, tightening his backpack strap. Let's see what's out there. They followed the narrow dirt trail as it curved between the trees. The forest was damp and cool, the scent of pine needles mixing with something older, moss, rot, the quiet breath of things untouched. Each footstep was muffled, each sound more distant than it should have been. It wasn't long before they spotted the first symbol. Carved into the bark of a tree just ahead, it was identical to the ones from the videos. 2 diagonal lines crossing through a jagged loop. The mark looked fresh. Sap still bled from the cuts. Brielle ran her fingers over it. It's exactly the same. Liam snapped a photo, though he wasn't sure why. Proof, maybe, or instinct. They kept moving. As they walked deeper, the symbols appeared more frequently. Some carved high, others low. One tree had 3 markings spiraling around its trunk like a warning. The trail narrowed, the air thickened. Then, a sound, soft, rustling, like a footstep, but not theirs. Liam froze. Brielle held up a hand. Silence. Then another rustle, closer this time. Brielle turned, eyes scanning the underbrush. Probably just a deer. But her voice lacked conviction. Liam pulled the phone from his pocket and began recording. Not to film anything in particular, it just felt right, or necessary. The trail curved again, revealing a small clearing. In the center stood a stump worn flat, with something resting on top, a folded piece of cloth. Next to it, a plastic water bottle, half full. They stepped into the clearing cautiously. Liam reached for the cloth, unfolding it slowly. Inside was a broken wristwatch and a scrap of paper with smeared ink. Only a few words remained readable. Still watching, not alone. Brielle's voice was quiet. Someone was here not long ago. Liam picked up the water bottle. The plastic was cold. Condensation hadn't fully evaporated. Hours, maybe. He felt it again then, that hum beneath his skin, like being observed, like the forest itself had eyes. They turned back toward the trail, but Liam paused. Wait. He pulled out the phone and opened the first video again, the one that had shown the clearing. He scrubbed to the end, pausing it as the camera panned over the stump. Then he looked around, matching details. Same stump. Same trees, same pattern in the moss. This is it, he said. This is the spot from the video. Brielle stepped beside him. Then whoever filmed it stood where we're standing. Liam swallowed, and ran the same way we came. They looked back the way they had come, nothing but forest and fading trail. Then Brielle broke the silence. Why does it feel like we're not just following them? He turned. What do you mean? She hesitated. It feels like we're repeating them, like walking straight into the same ending. Liam didn't answer, because part of him had already wondered the same. Still, something deep inside, beneath the fear and tension, felt clearer than ever. The strange videos, the forgotten trail, the broken clues, they weren't pulling him into darkness. They were leading him through it. He looked at Brielle, then at the path ahead, and without another word they kept walking. By the time they got back to town, dusk had swallowed the coastline. The sky bled orange and violet, the trees along the bluff now just jagged silhouettes. Liam hadn't spoken for miles. Brielle kept glancing at him, but she said nothing until they reached the porch of his aunt's cottage. "You're too deep in it," she said. "I can see it in your face." Liam didn't argue. He just nodded and opened the door. Inside, the house was quiet. Aunt Kelsey had gone out for the evening, leaving behind the soft hum of a floor lamp and the distant crackle of a radio left on low. They sat in the living room and Liam pulled out the phone. There were still videos he hadn't touched, newer ones, all filmed within the last week. He scrolled to one, dated 3 days ago. It was only 19 seconds. He pressed play. The screen showed a patch of forest floor unmoving. Then a soft sound, almost like humming. The camera lifted shakily. In the distance, barely visible, a figure moved through the trees when slow, limping. The filmer whispered something, voice trembling. "He's not gone." The video ended with a flash of motion, the camera dropping suddenly, then static. Liam's stomach turned. Something about that voice felt wrong, not afraid, resigned. He opened the next one. This time the screen was completely black, but the audio hissed and popped. Then came a voice, the same one from the previous video, low and raspy. "He watches while we sleep." Brielle leaned closer. "That doesn't sound like the same person." Liam shook his head. "It's not. This sounds like someone else, like someone who's been watching them." He opened another. 12 seconds. The filmer ran through thick underbrush, panting. A whisper rose above the breath, not their own. "You're almost there," it said, but it was said like a threat, not encouragement. Liam set the phone down, rubbing his eyes. "I don't know how much more of this I can watch." Brielle looked at him. "Then maybe you shouldn't." He shook his head. "I have to." Whoever had this phone was scared for their life. They wanted someone to know. Or, she said quietly, they wanted someone to follow. That stuck. He picked up the phone again, scrolling toward the end. The final 4 videos were time-stamped within 2 days of each other. The file sizes were shrinking. The movements in the thumbnails were frantic, blurred. Each one looked worse than the last. Liam didn't press play. Instead, he leaned back, exhausted. His hands trembled slightly. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't slept much. His thoughts felt frayed, pulled taut by images he couldn't shake. "I think," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "I'm starting to dream about it." Brielle sat still beside him. "About the voice?" "No. About the woods. About being followed. About turning around and seeing nothing, but still knowing something's there." She didn't speak right away. Finally, she said, "That's how fear works. It doesn't show its face. It lets you imagine it. And that's always worse." Liam looked at her. "But what if this isn't just fear?" He opened one last video. It was 6 seconds. It began with a quick turn of the camera, someone running, then stopping, gasping, trying to hide. A close-up of bark. On it, the symbol again, but this time it was freshly carved. Blood smeared the edges. Then a voice, whispering right into the mic, so close it almost vibrated through the speaker. "Almost there." The screen cut out. Liam dropped the phone. It hit the rug with a soft thud. Brielle stood. "That's enough for tonight." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the darkened screen, because deep down, he knew he wasn't just watching someone else's terror anymore. He was feeling his own. and it was only getting worse. They returned to the trail the next morning. The fog clung low to the ground, muting the forest's usual sounds. Liam moved with purpose, Brielle just behind him, her hand gripping the strap of her bag. Neither spoke much. The videos had taken their toll, and what once felt like morbid curiosity now felt like duty. Liam had re-watched one particular clip just before leaving. A longer one dated 6 days ago. The camera had scanned a small camp nestled against a boulder, a tarp, a tin mug. A blue sleeping bag zipped halfway. The person filming had whispered only once, "It's still here." And Liam had recognized something in the background, a moss-covered split rock he'd passed the day before. Now they were retracing that path. It took nearly 2 hours, winding through trails barely marked, ducking under branches slick with dew. Then Liam stopped cold. "There," he said. Between 2 slanted pines, the boulder sat just as he'd seen, grey broken down the center, and just beyond it, the remnants of a camp. The tarp lay folded, stained with something brown at the edges. The sleeping bag was torn, as if clawed or dragged. A crushed flashlight rested near the fire pit, long extinguished. Brielle scanned the area. "This was recent." Liam nodded. He crouched near the fire ring and spotted a boot print deep in the mud. His eyes followed a line of disturbances in the moss. Something had been moved, maybe dragged. Then, near the edge of the clearing, he found it. A locket, tangled in grass. He picked it up gently. The chain was broken, the pendant scratched. Inside, a photo, faded, water-damaged, but still visible. A young woman, maybe in her 20s, smiling. The initials etched into the back read, "M.R. Liam." Felt his stomach turn. "I think this belonged to her." "Who?" Brielle asked, walking over. He showed her the locket. She went quiet, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. A few quick searches later, she turned the screen toward him. The headline read, "Local hiker Maya Reed still missing after 14 days. Liam read the article in silence. Maya, age 26, last seen hiking solo near Cannon Beach, had planned a weekend trip, never returned. Search parties had combed the outer trails, but found nothing. Until now. "This is her," Brielle said. "M.R. Maya Reed's." Liam's fingers curled around the locket. She was the one filming. "Maybe." He looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Brielle hesitated. What if someone else had the phone after her? Liam thought of the voice, the whisper that wasn't hers, the footage that felt different. He thought of the journal fragment in the video, the fear layered over exhaustion. She had been followed, and maybe she hadn't escaped. Brielle began combing the area and called out from behind the boulder. Liam joined her where she pointed to a half-burned book tucked beneath a root, a journal. Most of the pages were soaked, but a few remained legible. Liam flipped through them carefully, reading words scribbled in desperation. "Still watching, always closer at night. I thought I saw eyes. The phone keeps dying faster." "He doesn't want me to tell," Brielle whispered. She was trying to leave a trail. "She didn't make it," Liam said, voice barely audible. They stood in silence. The woods felt thicker now, the air more still than before. The clearing, once just a place on a screen, had become real, tangible, haunted. Liam put the journal in his bag. He held onto the locket tightly. Something in him shifted. This wasn't a puzzle anymore. It was a record of fear, of someone trying to survive, and of a darkness that hadn't just taken Maya. It was waiting, still out there. And now it knew they were here. They returned to Brielle's house just before dusk, the forest shadows still clinging to their clothes. Liam sat at her kitchen table while she laid out the journal pages across the counter, spreading them to dry. The locket rested nearby, its broken chain curled like a question mark. Neither had spoken much during the hike back. The weight of what they'd found hung between them, too heavy for small talk. Now, in the safety of 4 walls, Liam opened the journal again. More words had dried into legibility. If you find this, I hope it's not too late. I saw him again last night. I know it's a him now. Too tall, wrong shape. I think he wants me to record everything. I think that's why the phone still works." He read slower now, almost reverently, as if the words might crumble. "When I stop filming, I feel him closer. When I record, he stays back, like he needs the story told." Liam looked up. She thought the phone was keeping her alive. Brielle leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Or it was bait, something to keep her busy. He shook his head. No, she wasn't just documenting, she was warning. Brielle didn't answer right away. Then she picked up her laptop and began typing. "What are you doing?" Liam asked. "Checking the phone's data against upload records. If she was uploading videos, they might have hit a public server, maybe even temporarily before going private." Liam opened the next video on the phone. It was over a minute long, the longest in the last group. Maya's face filled the screen. She looked hollow, dirty. Her lips were cracked and her hair was pulled back roughly. She held the phone at arm's length, the forest behind her shifting with soft wind. "I don't know how many of these are getting through," she whispered. I think someone else is watching them too, not just me, not just you." She swallowed, eyes darting. "He took my first phone. I don't know how this one survived." "I think he wanted it to survive." Liam leaned closer. "I found something last night," Maya continued. "A path, a symbol I hadn't seen before. It was carved in a circle, not slashed like the others. I followed it." She broke off. The sound of leaves rustling grew louder. Her eyes went wide. "He's close. I have to go." The screen went black. Liam exhaled. The silence afterward rang in his ears. Brielle tapped her keyboard. "There's something weird here." He turned. "What?" "These videos. Some of them were uploaded, but not by her." "What do you mean?" "The metadata says they were posted from a different device, a second phone. Almost all the recent ones." Liam felt the cold return. "So someone else had the phone?" Brielle nodded slowly. "Or she dropped it." And he picked it up. Liam's throat tightened, and kept filming. They stared at the device on the table. A thin layer of dust had started to settle along its edges. It looked so ordinary, just plastic and glass. But it held weeks of fear, of running, of someone breaking slowly on screen. And now it had led them here, to her voice, her story, and maybe to whoever had taken it last. Brielle shut her laptop. "We need to figure out where that last video was filmed." Liam agreed, but something else gnawed at him. If Maya hadn't filmed the final videos, then someone else had, and they were still recording, still documenting, still watching. He looked down at the journal at the last page she'd managed to write, "If you found this, finish what I couldn't." He felt the chill of responsibility settle into his bones. Because the phone wasn't just a record of the past anymore, it was an invitation, and someone, or something, still wanted the story to be told. Liam woke with a jolt. His heart pounded like he'd been running, but the room was still and dim, lit only by the first blush of dawn through the window blinds. The phone sat on his nightstand, screen off, silent. But something had shifted. He dressed quickly and met Brielle outside her place, where the fog was thick and low. They didn't talk, they didn't need to. The decision to return to the trail had already been made. This time Liam brought his own camera, not his phone, not the found one. His old Canon, the one Micah used to joke, was part of Liam's hand. He checked the battery, the lens, the SD card. If the thing in the woods wanted a witness, he would give it one. The trees swallowed them once more, the forest quieter than ever. Birds stayed silent. Even their footsteps seemed absorbed by the soil. As they moved, Liam began filming. It helped, or at least gave him a sense of control. He kept the camera aimed ahead, documenting their path, the marks on the trees, the soft swaying of the branches above. Then, without warning, Brielle stopped. "What is it?" Liam asked, lowering the camera. She didn't speak. She pointed. A figure stood at the edge of the path. Still, distant. Not approaching, just there. Then it was gone. Not like it walked away. Gone. Liam's blood went cold. He scanned the trees. Nothing. "Tell me you saw that," she whispered. He nodded. "I got part of it." They picked up speed, not quite running, but close. Every few minutes Liam checked the footage, but the figure never appeared on playback. Just trees and fog. "We're being watched," he said. Brielle didn't argue. A half-mile in, they found the fork Maya had written about in her journal. A new mark had been carved into the tree at its center, a perfect circle, deeper than the others. They followed it. The trail led them downhill into a gulch, where the air was heavier. At the bottom, the trees opened into a small clearing Liam recognized instantly. "This is where Maya stood in the last video," he said. Brielle nodded, her face pale. "We're standing where she was." Liam lifted his camera, scanning the edges of the clearing. The moss, the stump, the pattern of the branches, everything matched. Then a sound, sharp, unnatural, not footsteps, not wind. A scream, but not theirs. It came from just beyond the trees, too close to be ignored. A woman's voice crying out once, then silence. Liam froze. Brielle grabbed his arm. "That was real," she said. "Someone's out there." They backed toward the trail, but Liam's camera beeped. Dead battery. "That doesn't make sense," he muttered. "I just charged it." He fumbled to check the screen. It showed full battery. The power was fine, but the lens refused to respond. Static filled the viewfinder, and then something flickered in the frame. A shape, not a person. Eyes, too many. He pulled the battery and dropped the camera into his bag. "Liam," Brielle said, pointing to the trees. A shadow moved, not running, not hiding, gliding. Liam grabbed her hand. "We're leaving." They ran, not down the trail, but uphill, away from the clearing. Branches clawed at their clothes, roots nearly tripped them. Still they ran, hearts pounding louder than their footsteps. The forest groaned behind them, a presence. They didn't look back, not until they burst out of the tree line and onto the narrow road that wound around the coast. They stopped, gasping, shaking, no sign of anything behind them, but Liam knew. It hadn't been a trick of light or a bad dream. That thing had been watching them closer than ever. It had seen them watching, filming, following, and now it had decided to follow back. They didn't speak much on the way back. The road twisted along the cliffs, the ocean below black and endless. Liam kept glancing at the tree line, half expecting eyes to glow back at him. By the time they reached Brielle's house, the weight of what they'd seen settled into silence. Liam sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out the found phone, and opened the video folder again. Only 3 videos remained, each one shorter than the last. He played the first. Maya's voice, frantic and fragmented, filled the room. He doesn't leave. I tried to run, but he knows the paths." The screen shook violently. Trees flashed past. Then came a voice, deep, slow, unfamiliar. "One more." It wasn't Maya's. Liam paused the video. "That voice," he said, "that's not human." Brielle nodded slowly. It sounded layered. Like more than one voice at once. He stared at the timeline on the phone, tracing the dates backward. The videos, the symbols, the trail through the woods. They weren't random. They were mapped, timed, like rituals or warnings. Then he remembered the audio files in the hidden watch folder. He hadn't opened them yet. He tapped one. Static. Then faintly a whisper beneath it, too garbled to understand. Brielle leaned over. "What's that sound?" Liam scrubbed through the waveform. At one point it spiked sharply, almost rhythmic. "It looks like a pattern," he murmured. "Like something encoded." He imported the audio into a visualizer app. As the waveform displayed, his eyes narrowed. Inside the noise was a faint structure, not random, geometrically consistent, almost mapped. Brielle tilted her head. "That's not just noise, that's data." They enhanced the image, increasing contrast, smoothing frequencies, coordinates. A set of GPS numbers appeared faintly in the pattern. "Got you," Liam whispered. He entered them into his phone. The pin dropped deep inside Willow Dunes, farther than they had gone. No trails nearby, just a flat expanse of woods and silence. "We should tell someone," Brielle said. Liam hesitated. Then he played the second-to-last video. This time it wasn't Maya. The camera was lower, shakier, and whoever filmed it was breathing too heavily to speak. They stumbled, fell, picked up the phone again. The symbol appeared, burned into bark. Then came the voice again, one more. And the filmer whispered, "I saw her, she's not alone." The screen went black. Liam looked at Brielle. There was someone else, maybe another victim, or maybe... He couldn't finish. Maybe whoever filmed that wasn't a victim at all. Brielle opened her laptop and pulled up local police reports. There are 6 hikers listed missing in the last 8 years, all in a 15-mile radius, no bodies, no clues, no patterns. She paused. Until now. They traced each disappearance date and location. With every point they added to the map, a slow curve began to form, a wide spiral. At its center sat the coordinates they'd just found. Liam whispered, "It's not random. It's a design," Brielle said. "A boundary, and that location, it's the eye of the storm." They stared at the screen. Then Liam opened the final video. Maya again. Her eyes were swollen, her lips cracked, her voice faint. "I don't know if I'm dead yet," she said, "but I know I'm not alone." Behind her something moved, just a shadow, slow and deliberate. "If you found this, he let you." Her hand trembled. "That means you're next." Then the feed distorted, flickering static. When it cleared, her face was gone. Only the forest remained, silent, waiting. The timestamp read 9:42 a.m., today's date. Liam checked the clock, 9:58 a.m. He looked at Brielle. He uploaded this today, which meant someone was still out there, watching, following, filming, and now they had just been marked. They waited until nightfall. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The coordinates sat like a pulse on their phones, drawing them in. Liam had tried to think of reasons not to go, danger, logic, fear, but none of them outweighed the certainty growing in his chest. The story wasn't finished, and something, maybe Maya, maybe something else, wanted it to be. So they packed flashlights, backup batteries, water, and nothing else. The hike was longer this time, the trail nearly vanishing as they pushed deeper into the woods. The fog was denser than usual, clinging to their skin, curling between branches like breath. Every few steps Liam glanced over his shoulder, but the world remained quiet. Too quiet. No animals, no wind. Even their footsteps seemed hushed, as if the forest was listening. Brielle broke the silence. "I keep feeling like we're walking through something." Liam didn't ask what she meant. He felt it too. Like they'd passed a threshold, crossed into a space untouched by the outside world. At the base of a narrow slope, the trees parted into a flat clearing, the GPS point. It was empty, no campsite. No structure, just dirt and moss and silence. "Is this it?" Brielle asked. Liam checked the coordinates. Exact match. They scanned the area, walking slowly. Every step felt too loud, like it might wake something sleeping beneath them. Then Brielle knelt near a half-buried object. She dug it out gently, a canvas bag soaked through. Inside, Maya's ID, cracked and faded, a rusted multi-tool. And, impossibly, a green apple, fresh, unblemished, resting atop the other contents like an offering. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. Liam touched the apple. It was cold. And then, the scream. Sharp, human, nearby. It tore through the clearing like a blade. They froze. Another scream, so closer, raw and desperate. Liam grabbed Brielle's hand and ran. They pushed through the brush, heading toward the sound. The light from their flashlights bounced wildly across trunks and leaves. A third scream echoed. This one cut off halfway. Then silence. They stopped in a small depression, surrounded by fallen logs. Nothing, just their breathing, frantic and uneven. Brielle turned in a slow circle. "That sounded real." Liam nodded, scanning the darkness. "But where—" He stopped. At the base of a tree buried just beneath loose soil, something reflected their light. He reached down and unearthed it. A phone. Not the one he'd found before. A different model, Newer, scratched, but still powered. He turned it on. There was only one video, no title, no date, just a thumbnail, a still image of the forest framed from the ground. He pressed play. The video opened in darkness. Then slowly light seeped in. Someone, a woman, whispered, "If you're seeing this, I didn't make it. But maybe you can." She sounded like Maya, but the face, when it appeared, wasn't hers. It was someone else. Pale, dirty, eyes wide with terror. She held the phone out, turning it until it faced the forest behind her. A shadow passed in the distance. Then she whispered, "It feeds on what we leave behind." The image blurred. The screen shook. Then, just before the video cut out, her voice returned, faint and terrified. "He's still here." The screen went black. Brielle stepped back. "Liam." He looked up. The forest was quiet again, but the trees didn't feel empty. They felt like walls, and somewhere beyond them, something breathed, watching, waiting. And now, it knew they were here. They didn't speak for a long time. The silence around them wasn't just quiet, it was charged, heavy, with presence. The two phones, one old and cracked, the other recently buried, sat between them like relics. Liam stared at the screen of the second phone. "This video was taken recently." Brielle's voice was barely audible. "How recently?" Liam checked the metadata. "This morning, less than 2 hours ago." Brielle stepped back. "Then someone's still here." Liam felt his heartbeat climb. He opened the final video on the older phone, the one he'd found on the beach. The thumbnail was blank, no sound, no image. He tapped play. The screen faded in slowly. First, trees. Still. Then Maya's face, not crying this time, but calm, hollow. She looked straight into the lens. "If you found this," she whispered, "it means you stepped into it too." She blinked slowly. The stories, they weren't stories. They were traps, trails. He lets them grow so someone will follow. Behind her something moved. Not a person. Not quite. A shape. Broad. Slow. Wrong. "He lets you find us," she said, "because that's the only way he spreads." Liam froze. "Spread?" Maya continued, her voice trembling now. "I kept filming because I thought it helped, but the truth is, he wanted me to." The screen flickered. A low tone, like a hum, vibrated through the speakers. Then the frame changed. It wasn't Maya anymore. It was someone holding the phone, running, breathing hard. The camera tilted wildly. Trees rushed past. A scream in the distance, and not human but close. Then the filmer stopped. The lens steadied, pointed at the forest, and from behind the trees, a figure stepped forward. Only for a second, too fast, too distant, but real, and watching. Then the voice, close, clear, male. Almost there. The camera dropped. The video ended. Black screen. Liam stood frozen. His breath clouded the cold air around him. His skin prickled. "That wasn't Maya," Brielle said. "Not all of it." Liam nodded. "Someone else finished it." She stared at the phone. "Why upload it now?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to, because this wasn't just a warning anymore, it was a lure, and they had followed it. Liam pulled out his own phone. "We need to call the police." Brielle didn't argue this time. "Now." He dialed 911. The line rang. Once, twice. Then, click. Silence. Not even static. He checked the signal. 5 bars. Yet the call hadn't connected. He tried again. Same result. Brielle looked at her screen. Full service, but it won't dial. A noise cut through the clearing. Not loud, just wrong. A slow rustle, like dry leaves moved by something heavy. Liam grabbed the phones and shoved them in his bag. "We're leaving," he said. They didn't run. Not yet. They walked quickly, stepping over roots and ducking under low branches, trying not to panic. But the forest shifted around them. Paths that had once been clear now felt foreign, turned, closed. A shadow flickered beside them. Then another. Brielle whispered, "He's watching." Liam didn't stop. He kept walking until the trees began to thin and the outline of the trail appeared again. A scream shattered the silence behind them. Not human, not animal, something else. They ran. No hesitation now. The sound followed, not footsteps, not breathing, just presence, like the woods bent around something large and unseen. Branches lashed their arms, thorns tore at their legs. Still they didn't stop. Finally they burst into the open. Moonlight, wind, the empty road. They collapsed onto the gravel shoulder, gasping. Liam pulled the phones from his bag. The newer one was gone. He turned to Brielle. "Did you?" She shook her head. It had vanished. The last video gone with it. But Liam didn't need it anymore. Because he understood. They were part of it now. And once the story finds you, it never lets go. They didn't speak, not for a long time. The night pressed in from all sides, and though they were out of the woods, the feeling hadn't left them. Liam could still feel it. That weight behind his shoulders, that sense of being one blink away from seeing something he couldn't unsee. The air was sharp and wet with salt. Somewhere far below, the waves crashed, distant and steady, but nothing about the sound felt comforting now. "We need help," Brielle finally said. Her voice was hoarse. Liam nodded and pulled out his phone again. He tried to call 911, still nothing. He checked the signal, 5 bars, perfect service. He opened his camera app. It wouldn't load. Brielle tried hers. Same result. The screens refused to respond. Not frozen, just waiting. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Then came the sound. A low thud behind them, soft but distinct, not natural. They spun. Nothing. Just the road stretching into darkness. Then another thud, closer, like a footstep dragging across loose stone. Brielle grabbed Liam's wrist. "Run." And they did. They tore down the road, shoes slamming the pavement. Every few seconds Liam glanced back, always nothing. But the sound didn't stop. It grew, heavier, closer, as though something enormous moved without ever being seen. They veered off the road and into the brush toward the emergency highway pull-off a mile ahead, a place where a ranger station and signal tower waited. They didn't talk. Just ran. Branches slapped at them. Thorns raked across Liam's arms. His lungs burned. Behind them the forest groaned. Not trees, not wind. Something else. Then Liam tripped. He hit the ground hard. The breath knocked from his chest. The bag slid away. The old phone spilled out, landing screen up in the grass. It lit up. The camera turned on by itself and began recording. Brielle doubled back, grabbing his arm. "Get up." But Liam stared at the phone, because something moved across the screen. Not on the path. Behind them. Eyes. Tall. Distant. Watching. Then a shape crossed in front of the lens, just for a second. No face. No feet. Just a blur. Long. Wide. Breathing. He scooped up the phone and sprinted. They broke through the final stretch of trees and onto the gravel lot of the ranger station. A green building stood under a blinking tower light. The front door was open. They ran inside. Empty. A single desk. A metal cabinet. A radio. Brielle grabbed the mic. "Hello? Anyone, this is an emergency. We need help." Nothing. Static. Liam pulled the door shut and bolted it. Then he slumped to the floor, the phone still in his hand, the red light still blinking. Recording. He tried to stop it. The button wouldn't respond. "Why is it still going?" Brielle asked, voice trembling. Liam didn't answer, because deep down, he knew. The story hadn't ended yet. It was still unfolding. Outside, the forest creaked. Liam turned the phone toward the window. For a split second, the lens caught movement. A slow hand, just fingertips, long, wrong, dragging across the glass. Then it was gone. The camera kept recording. Liam set the phone on the desk, still filming the window. And waited. They both waited. Nothing came. Not immediately. Then blue lights flickered through the trees. A car, a patrol. Liam and Brielle burst from the station, waving their arms. The officer stopped, leapt out, radioed for backup. He didn't ask many questions, just looked at their faces, pale, shaking, and told them to get in. They didn't look back, not until later. When they returned to the station, escorted by a second patrol, the phone was gone. No recording, no trace, only dust. And the faint shape of a handprint on the inside of the window. The sheriff's office smelled like old coffee and rain-soaked carpet. Liam sat beside Brielle on a worn bench in the corner, while deputies whispered across the room, occasionally glancing in their direction. A medic had checked them both, noting the scratches, shallow cuts, and signs of exhaustion, but the real wounds weren't physical. The questions came slowly, polite at first. Where had they been? Why did they run? What exactly had they seen? Liam answered honestly, or as honestly as he could without sounding insane. He told them about the videos, the coordinates, the journal, the scream. He even mentioned the phone, though he left out the part about it recording on its own. Brielle filled in the rest, her voice steady. She kept her story clean, careful, but didn't shy away from what mattered. They saw something real, and it was still out there. The officers wrote everything down, but no one pressed deeper. No one offered theories. No one said they believed. After an hour, they were allowed to leave. No arrests, no lectures, just silence. Outside, the dawn broke quietly. Pale light spilled across the coastal town as though nothing had happened. Tourists bought pastries. Dogs barked. Kids laughed in the distance. Normal, almost offensively normal. Liam walked Brielle back to her place. Neither spoke until they reached her porch. Then she asked, "Do you think it's over?" He didn't answer right away. He looked toward the line of trees at the edge of town, the same ones they'd walked through days ago. "I don't know," he said, "but I don't think it ever really ends, not for us." She nodded. "We could have died out there." "Yeah. And you'd do it again, wouldn't you?" Liam didn't hesitate. "Yes." Because he understood something now, not about the thing in the woods, but about himself. The numbness that had followed Micah's death, the way the world had turned flat and colorless, it had been waiting to be shattered, and in those woods, in the fear and the mystery and the cold, something inside him had come back to life. It wasn't just about the horror, it was about feeling again. Brielle walked inside. Liam stayed on the porch, sitting down on the steps. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the locket. M.R. Meyer Reed's. He ran his thumb across the initials. The story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to all of them now. He didn't keep the phone. It had vanished. But the weight of what it had shown him lingered, and not just in memory. The footage remained burned into his mind, the whisper, the forest, the face in the dark. The story had marked him, and he accepted that. 2 days later, Liam returned to the beach where he'd found the phone. The tide was low. Gulls circled overhead. He walked alone. No camera, no flashlight, just the locket in his hand. He reached the place where the sand met the rocks, where it had all begun, and stood there for a long time. Nothing stirred. No signs, no warnings, just waves and wind. And somehow that was enough. He crouched, pressed the locket into the wet sand, and left it there. Not as an offering, but as an ending. One he could live with. As he walked back up the bluff, he felt lighter. Not safe, not healed, but real again. Present. Whatever had followed them in the woods. It hadn't taken him. Not yet. And that was enough. Weeks passed. Life moved on, or at least pretended to. School resumed. The fog over Cannon Beach thinned with the approach of summer. Tourists returned in slow waves, unaware of what had nearly happened just beyond the tree line. Liam kept mostly to himself. He didn't talk much about what happened. Not because no one asked, but because there was no way to explain it without sounding broken. He and Brielle met occasionally, walking the shoreline in silence or sitting under the cliffs where the signal always dropped. They didn't bring it up, but it was always there, the space between words, the weight behind their eyes. And yet, something had changed. Something good. Liam started editing again. Not the found footage. Not the horror. His own. Moments he'd filmed before everything. Street corners, storm clouds, Micah laughing beside him. He found a rhythm, and eventually he found peace. But some nights, when the wind blew from the east and the moon sat low over the dunes, he'd dream. Of trees, of static, of eyes that never blinked. And sometimes, only sometimes, he'd wake up with the feeling that someone had left something at his door, but nothing was ever there. One afternoon, while walking the beach alone, Liam saw something half buried near the place where it all began. Not a phone, just a flat stone, smooth, grey and carved into its face, the circle. No slashes, no blood. Just the mark. Waiting. He didn't touch it. He just turned and walked away. Because he understood now. The story doesn't end, not really, it just waits. For the next person, the next question, the next video. So if you're watching this, and it feels familiar, if something about the symbols, the silence, the feeling of being watched makes your heart tighten, listen carefully. Some stories are meant to be found, and some find you. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You never know when the next video might be the one that connects everything, and if this one left you thinking or feeling something you can't explain, you're not alone. Click the video on screen now to keep watching, because maybe the next clue is already waiting, right where you are.